This video was brought to you by Squarespace. Here we are again, my friends, on the cusp of a new generation of Nintendo hardware. Can you believe it was 8 years ago, almost to the day, that we were in the same situation? Staring up at the same enchanting sky. I don't know how many of you were around for my Calm Before the NX Storm video, but that was one of the biggest videos of my early career. We were all so curious about this mysterious new Nintendo console, rumored to be some sort of home console handheld hybrid, if you could believe such a thing. Coming off the failure of the Wii U, it was such a strange moment in history. That, of course, was what I tried to capture in that video. But now we have multiple layers of strangeness because we're in the same boat again, but this time with the gift of hindsight and in the wake of a very eventful 8 years. Knowing what we know about the Switch, having experienced this long generation, it's so interesting to look back at that time. That innocent, simpler time when we didn't even know what the thing's name would be. We wondered if a hybrid console would truly mean the end of dedicated handhelds, which up to that point had been a staple of Nintendo's business, a constant companion to their bigger consoles. How is a hybrid console even possible? How could it be powerful enough or have enough battery life? Man, we truly had no idea what was in store. I don't think we could have ever guessed how things would turn out. It goes without saying that Nintendo is in a completely different place this time around. Before they revealed the NX, Nintendo was at one of the lowest points in their entire history. They were genuinely struggling as a company. It cannot be overstated how much they needed a hit, how much they needed to revitalize their business. They were hemorrhaging money, and their IPs were less relevant than ever in a rapidly evolving gaming landscape. The 3DS was doing well enough to keep the lights on, but in order for them to keep doing what they loved doing, their next system needed to do well. They were basically in a state of crisis, about to take one more wild swing before they were forced to seriously reconsider their entire business model. We were worried about them, really. It was kind of a scary time. Hey! Did you know this video was brought to you by Squarespace? Squarespace makes building websites easy, even if you have zero prior knowledge. You don't need to write a single line of code. Just start with a template and use the intuitive builder to format text, embed pictures and video, move stuff around however you want, and before long, you will have a terrific site. My site, Arlo Recommends, I can make a bunch of posts and schedule them to go out at specific times and automatically generate posts to my social media. I mean, it basically runs itself. I've got a built-in suite of analytics here, which is awesome, and if I ever need more for my site, Squarespace offers lots of powerful extensions. To try out Squarespace for yourself, head to squarespace.com for a free trial. Then when you're ready to launch, head to squarespace.com/Arlo to save 10% off your first website or domain. And now, for today's recommendation... stretching. Stretching is one of those things we all know we need to do, but never do. So if you don't already, I'm just encouraging you to give it a shot. I'm talking literally a few minutes in the morning and before bed, just for starters. I've been doing it, and even a tiny bit can make a big difference. Trust me, you owe your body a few minutes a day. Thanks again to Squarespace. And today, they could not possibly be in a more opposite position. Everything has changed in those 8 years. They managed to find their way to the good timeline, you know? They did everything they needed to do. They did all of it. And to say it paid off handsomely would be an understatement. The Switch is not only their best-selling home console ever, there is a fine chance that it will soon be crowned the best-selling console of all time, period. I mean, the Wii and DS generation was seen as a time of unprecedented profit and growth for Nintendo. They were like impossibly successful. And now even that wild success has been dwarfed by the success of the Switch. Hardware sales have remained strong for the entirety of what is now the longest Nintendo generation ever. Their tentpole series are selling the best they've ever sold several times over. Nintendo is a household name again. They still like to be unpredictable, obviously, but I feel like they've largely cast off their reputation for alternating randomly between delightful innovations and strange, avoidable blunders. The Switch generation has been nothing if not consistent, and their business model is now based much more on logic, on the desires of actual paying customers. They've been reviving and revitalizing old IPs left and right, making some of our wildest dreams come true. Nintendo-related internet content, whether it's reviews, news, opinions, or wild speculation, has basically become an industry of its own. I don't think I've ever gone into a Nintendo console generation with more confidence that they'll stick the landing. At least since, I've been paying attention to this stuff. I don't know if the collective Nintendo fan consciousness has ever been less worried that they'll make some ridiculous blunder, throw in some absurd gimmick that only hurts the new console. Because that was the Nintendo of old. This Nintendo, here in 2024, they seem to know what they're doing. And that's good because the landscape has changed dramatically as well. I've spent a lot of time recently marveling at just how different things are now than they were back in 2016. It's hard to even see it until you really start to look back. Multiplayer games were on the rise, but most of the massive IPs that have become seemingly permanent fixtures of the gaming world sprang to life after the Switch launched. Some of the popular genres of today were in their infancy or practically non-existent back then. Even just the number of games being released at any given time has increased exponentially. Nintendo was once facing a crisis of more than just sales. They lacked relevance at a time when gaming was exploding. And it's even easier to see now how them riding that wave was absolutely necessary for them to survive. The industry has probably never been more dog-eat-dog than it is right now. So I think it's safe to say that the vibe is very different this time around. It's much more hopeful, that's for sure. Now, instead of a relatively small cult of loyal followers holding out hope for a brighter future, we are an army of old-timers and newcomers alike, eager for Nintendo to take their next step. But even if things are more hopeful, I'll admit that maybe they're not quite so exciting. The Switch was once a thing of pure mystery, along with Nintendo's own fate. We just didn't know what would happen. But now that the mystery has long been solved, we've seen Nintendo's metamorphosis play out. We're just waiting for the sequel, We expect Switch 2 to be more Switch. We expect next gen to be more or less like this gen, but newer and better. Nintendo could still throw us a curveball, but I'm really not expecting anything crazy. I think they've finally realized that you can't just be wacky. You've got to balance the true surprises with reasonable choices. This means that, sure, the mystery isn't quite as deep, and thus the hype has been tempered a smidge. I spend less time marveling at what the future might hold, and more time just being stoked for the cool games I'll get to play. Many people have lamented that there's a small element of magic that's been absent during the Switch generation, and perhaps even now, with the next big thing on the horizon, that magic is still absent. Nothing quite feels as special as it used to. But I think that's okay. I think that's just a natural result of Nintendo doing what's right, focusing on good products and games, gearing up to give us even more. It's okay for them to aim for a more predictable success with a wider audience, even if it means leaving behind a little pinch of charm we were once used to. I mean, that's just the Switch itself, isn't it? It's got less charm than any other Nintendo system, but
it's also the most successful. It appeals to the most people. It's okay for things to change. Sometimes they just have to. Sometimes you have to let go of the idea of recapturing the exact essence of something you loved in the past and just embrace what comes to you in the here and now. And on that note, I know that I've certainly changed since 2016. My personal place in this whole greater Nintendo discussion also feels very different here in 2024. My career as a YouTuber was in its infancy in 2016. I was part of a whole new generation of gaming creators that cropped up with the sudden, meteoric rise of the Switch. Back then, I was fumbling my way from video to video, learning on the fly how the heck you're supposed to cover gaming news, figuring out through sheer trial and error what kinds of content my audience might like. But now I'm just about 10 years into what's been a decently successful career. I won't pretend like every Nintendo fan in the world knows who I am, but I'm relatively well known in Nintendo-related internet circles, I'd say. I am staggeringly blessed and humbled to have amassed over 700,000 subscribers. If I'm not definitively the Paper Mario guy or Pikmin guy, I'm certainly one of the Paper Mario guys or Pikmin guys. If I was once just a weird dude with some opinions, only beginning to gather up a little following online, now I'm a weird dude with a well-established following of wonderful people who are actually waiting to hear my opinions on the next big Nintendo thing. It's crazy. This is my job. For the most part, I know precisely what's expected of me. Like Nintendo themselves, I'm just gonna keep doing what I've been doing because it worked and people like it. It's a little less thrilling, less intense and strange. But again, that's okay. And at the risk of spinning this off into a whole thing, boy howdy, have I also changed as a person since 2016. Even in the last couple years, even just this year, I feel like I've dramatically matured. I've made massive improvements to my overall health. I've developed a greater appreciation of life and the people around me. I've worked on my anxiety and other mental health issues. In many ways, I've become a person I never imagined it was possible for me to be. I feel like I just understand myself and other people and the world so much more clearly now. Really, sometimes I look at myself from back then and feel like I'm looking at a different person. It might be weird to say this, but I don't know, YOLO. I feel like I've finally grown up. I really do. I don't know exactly when it happened, but somewhere in those 8 years, I kind of found myself. I learned how to take a serious look at myself and consider how I affect other people, both the good and the bad. I untangled the false narratives I once considered cold, hard truths about myself and the world. I stopped being an anxious and confused, yet wide-eyed kid and became, well, I hesitate to put labels on myself now. And I'm certainly not strictly free from anxiety and confusion. You never stop learning and growing. But whatever I am now, I feel good about it. But setting aside all the ways in which this time is a little different from last time, the real point of this video is once again to highlight this moment and what it means. There is something very strange and very special about this exact point in time. For us fans, Nintendo is part of our lives. Each system, along with its games, becomes a little piece of our own personal histories. For every period of my life, since I was probably, 7 years old, there was a different little Nintendo box under my TV, or on my bedside table, or in a little repurposed camera bag in my backpack. Every era, from childhood through adolescence and into adulthood and beyond, is associated with those gaming experiences I had along the way. The launch of a new Nintendo console is always the start of a new chapter of my life, in a sense. It's only as far as the gaming part of my life is concerned, but that's a pretty big part of my life, isn't it? Gaming is one of my primary hobbies. It's one of the things I enjoy doing most. I mean, heck, in my case, it's literally my job. And what I play and enjoy is, in a sense, a reflection of where I am as a person. That's why my gaming tastes have changed so much over the years. So sure, we're not talking about getting married or finishing college or having a baby or anything like that, but I won't minimize how much of an impact a new console can have. It's video games, it's not that important, but it kind of is. And the days leading up to that big reveal, there's something magical about that, no matter how you look at it. In 2016, we knew that we would look back on that moment someday and smile at how little we knew, how much there was in store for us. We are now experiencing the someday of back then. We all have this knowledge. This thing is a part of our lives, so it's just so strange to look back when we simply didn't know. Because once you know, you know. You can only not know once. And not knowing, that's a much more unique state of being, isn't it? And looking forward once again, that's where we are right now. We just don't know. And in 7 or 8 years, we'll probably look back at this moment as well and marvel at the fact that we once lived in a world where this system, this thing that's long become a constant part of our lives, just like the Switch was, just like all the previous systems were, it just didn't exist. Back at that time in 2024, we didn't even know its name and could only guess what it was like. Its games were a complete mystery, its surprises all unspoilt, most of them years away from happening. Most of what would eventually launch on the thing hadn't even gone into production yet. The design of the system itself might not have even been finalized. How bizarre it will someday be to imagine that this, right here, our reality, was once our reality. How bizarre it is to be here, once more in the calm before the storm. The moment Schrodinger's Nintendo console is revealed, suddenly it will cease to exist in the realm of rumors and speculation, i.e. myths and legends. It will hit us like a bolt of holy lightning, and then it will exist. It will exist forever. But until then, we're here, in this odd place between places, this time betwixt two eras. And aside from obsessing over every little rumor that comes our way, all we can really do right now is wait. When will the reveal come? Days? Weeks? Months? This year? Next year? We can't know. That's why I'm going to enjoy this moment. I'm going to appreciate its rarity, the sense of reflective calm that accompanies it. Knowing will be great, but we'll have plenty of time to know. Right now, I'm comfortable with not knowing. Maybe we should all try to be a little more comfortable with not knowing sometimes.